Thank you. Good morning. This morning it's the Hartford Subcommittee of the MARB. I want to call this meeting to order. It's Thursday, the 21st, and the time is 10:04, and I do have a quorum. I don't have any opening remarks. I think we can just move forward right to the minutes of April the 27th. If I could get a motion for approval of those minutes.
I'll move if I'm there.
Thank you. You were. Thank you, Mark.
Second it.
Thank you, Stephen. Any discussion? I hear none. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any abstentions? All right, the minutes have been approved. Thank you. Let's move on to the third item on the agenda today, and that's the review and the discussion of the Milliman report on the Hartford School health insurance plan. Today with us is Kathy Eli, and she is the one who worked on this project for us from Milliman. And this comes back from some time ago, and today she's going to walk us through her report on the Hartford Public Schools, and it is her review of our request of the employee benefit costs compared to the state partnership plan. And I'm going to turn that over to you, Kathy.
Thank you, Kim. Good morning, everyone. So as Kim just described, I'm going to talk about the review that we did of the benefit program for Hartford Public Schools. In a nutshell, basically what we were looking to determine was, would it have cost more or less money for employees and retirees to be covered in the state partnership plan as compared to the self-funded arrangement that is currently in place with Anthem. After some discussion, we agreed that the most appropriate focus would be on actual historical costs rather than trying to project things into the future and make a guess as to what future costs would look like. So the scope of our review was the total costs during the plan year July 2020 through June 2021, and the following year that began July 2021 and went through June 2022. Quick question, does everyone have a copy of this report, or would it be easier for me to share it on the screen?
I think it would be helpful for you to share on the screen as you walk through the pages.
Okay, just
Thank you.
wanted to check. Thank you. All right, so can folks see that start of the
Yep.
report? So like I said, we looked primarily at the two most recently completed experience years so that we could get a sense of what the actual total costs were and compare it to what the total premiums that would be paid for the same population to enroll in the partnership plan. We included a really quick high-level review of the handful of folks that are 65 and over fully insured. They're not part of, obviously, the self-insured Anthem costs that I'm going to discuss, but we did look at their premium rates. And then finally, we just did a comparison of what the benefit plans look like. So that was essentially the scope of this review. At a high level, what we found was that for each of the two plan years that we looked at, the total benefit costs were less than what the actual premium would have been for the same population. For the July 2020 contract year, the difference was a little over $9 million. And for the following year, it was a little bit less than $3 million.
Thank you.
I want to note that these are the total all-in benefit costs. they're not adjusted for any employee contributions. And what I mean by that is, it is my understanding and expectation that nobody gets, or most people don't get, their health coverage for free. That there's some contribution being made. Usually this is done through payroll. Some portion of the total cost is borne by employees. We have not factored that into our analysis, for the primary reason being that we would know what the employee contributions were for the current arrangement, but we would be guessing what those contributions would look like for the partnership plan. At the basic level, if we assumed that the dollar amount contribution would be exactly the same from employees, then really our findings wouldn't be any different. The differences would still be the same. So we've just left employee contributions out of the equation here. So the following table gives you a breakdown of all of the components of those total costs that are in table 1. Essentially, what we've included are the medical and pharmacy claims that were paid through Anthem for all of the folks that were covered during these time periods. For some people who are covered by a Century Preferred PPO plan, they have their pharmacy, or they had their pharmacy separately through CVS Caremark. So we've included the costs of those claims as well. Folks that are in the HSA plans had contributions made by Hartford Public Schools for the year. It's our understanding that it was 50% of the deductible was what Hartford Public Schools contributed to folks' HSA accounts. That's a cost related to the benefit plans, so that's included. Then there's a reduction to the claims for stop-loss claims. That is recoveries for exceptionally high-cost claimants who exceed what the attachment point, which I believe was $500,000. So there's reinsurance on those large claims. The final reduction to the claim amount was for pharmacy rebates, which under the way things work with Anthem, that's just money back to Hartford Public Schools. It's not offsetting any other costs. It's just a return of money for pharmacy rebates. So those are all of essentially the claim components. There's also fees that you pay in a self-funded arrangement. They're loosely broken down here into the self-insurance fees, which are basically the costs that you're paying to Anthem to administer the program. Stop-loss fees is essentially the cost for the reinsurance against large claims. And discount share fees is an additional fee that Anthem collects. It's an access fee for networks, and that would be the third component of the retention to get to the total cost. So like I said, these are the all in, that's the total cost of the benefits for each of those years. The next thing we did, and this one is a little trickier because there's presentation differences and things that go into the Anthem renewal that are not, or there's actual costs that are not really identified in the Anthem renewal is what I should say. We were asked to look at how close was the renewal to what actually happened. Because as you know, under a self-funded plan, the claims that you pay are only the claims that happen. So, before the contract year, Anthem's going to, do their best to project what they think the costs are going to look like based on the people that are covered, based on historical costs. They'll project a claim number that is really the primary driver of what your renewal looks like every year. And then obviously what actually happens is what you pay. Some years that might be more, some years that might be less. So this table 3 is sort of it's a high-level comparison of the items that were included, specifically identified in the Anthem renewal. I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with what the Anthem renewal report looks like. It's a many pages PDF document with lots of different tables. For the purpose of this comparison, I'm focused on what's called Report 1 in the Anthem renewal. It's the first page, and it presents, here's what we think the total cost is going to be for the plan year. And it shows a projected claim amount, and it shows projected fees for 2 of the fees that are collected. Those would be the self-insurance fees and the stop-loss fees. So we did a comparison for each of the contract years to what was shown in the renewal, and that's what's in this projected cost. Those numbers would match up to what you would find in Report 1 of the Anthem renewal each year. And then the actual cost is, like I said, that's what actually happened. Now, if you tried to do a comparison of the totals in Table 3 to the total that I just walked through in Table 2, you'll see it doesn't match. There's a couple of reasons for that. Included in the actual costs, what actually has to get paid was the HSA contributions. That's sort of outside of the benefit plan costs that Anthem would project, because any contributions to folks' HSA accounts, that's a decision made by Hartford Public Schools, has nothing to do with Anthem's cost. It's a cost, but it's not part of the renewal. Also, it doesn't include the CVS Caremark claims, obviously, because that's not part of the Anthem renewal. The other big thing that's not included in this table is the item from Table 2 called the discount share fees. That's not a number that Anthem explicitly projects in their renewal. It's built into their renewal, but it's not a number that you can go through all of those pages and pages and pages and pick out. It's actually discussed in the footnotes towards the very end of the renewal package. There's a bunch of additional notes on things that get charged and how they're calculated and what they're for. And that's where you'll find a discussion of the discount share fees. So nonetheless, we just tried to do a comparison of the numbers that we could compare. And what you'll see is that for the July 2020 plan year, the total actual cost shown here is, about $39.4 million compared to the comparable number from the Anthem renewal was about $46.4 million. Now, you'll notice that we're showing the member months and also a per member per month cost. I wanted to translate the total dollars to a per member basis, because if you've got a different number of people covered in the actual experience period than what was projected, and in this case, you can see there were fewer member months actually enrolled than what Anthem has projected. And so based on that, you would sort of expect that the total dollars would be less, but that makes it harder to compare. So as actuaries, we like to talk about everything on a PMPM or per member per month basis. So we've translated it to that number. That's that can be the comparison. So in July 2020, the actual costs for items that were identified in the renewal came in less. For the following year, they came in slightly higher. I've done a whole lot of talking. Have I lost anyone yet? Are there any questions at this point? Okay, I will keep going then. So the next piece of the comparison, obviously, is that was all the detail on what did things actually cost and why. So Table 4 presents a summary of what it would have cost if we took that exact population of people and assumed that they had been enrolled in the partnership plan. And so for the July 2020 plan year, it would have been $53.1 million in premium. And that's just, you pay the premium and the partnership plan pays the claims. End of story. The premium includes, all of the fees that are outlined in Table 2 that, are part of the actual costs. This is how the dollars break down. Following Table 4, we just show, to kind of make that a little bit more digestible. This is the total head counts of folks in those time periods. And Table 4B shows this is what the premium would have been for each of those folks for that year. The next part of our report looks at, like I had mentioned earlier, there's a handful of folks that were covered on a fully insured Anthem Medicare supplement plan. Those folks pay 100% of the premium, so it doesn't really impact what it costs Hartford Public Schools to provide coverage, but they're part of the whole group, so folks thought that it would be important to at least mention them. These people exist. They pay 100% of a fully insured premium, and currently, based on information that I got from Anthem, the Anthem Plan F premium was $262.36 per month. However, Plan F doesn't include pharmacy benefits. So there's an additional cost for pharmacy, and that's, the number below it, that's, just over $1,000 a month. The partnership plan, Medicare Advantage plan, that would be what those folks would enroll in. The premiums, based on information that I got from the state, I don't think I could find this on, I think the website only has current premium rates. So I got the prior period premium rates from the state, and that's what the premium would be. So at June 30th, 2022, there were 17 people who were enrolled in the Plan F with Anthem. That number, over the 24 months of experience that we looked at, I know that number had been dropping. I think it started out at around 23 people in July of 2020, dropped to 17 at June of 2022. I'm not sure how many folks remain in that plan. My guess is it's less than 17. They're not really what moves the needle on a decision. It's just, more information to complete the story. The final thing we looked at was the plan comparisons. And, obviously you can look at just the grids of plan benefits and say, oh, here's a $10 copay, here's a $20 copay, which is better. In addition to looking at the actual benefits, we included some commentary on just some general observations and things to think about when you're comparing a self-insured plan to a fully insured plan. They do work differently. Under a self-insured plan, the costs that you incur are truly just whatever the claims are for that time period. If nobody gets sick and nobody goes to the doctor and nobody goes to the hospital, the claims are going to be very low. That's what you're going to pay for. There's always going to be fees. In a self-funded plan, you've got fees. In a fully insured plan, you've got fees. They're just all hidden, wrapped up in the premium. In a fully insured plan, you pay the premium. It's, really nice. You know what your cost is going to be. It's set before the plan year. This is the cost, you pay it. However, if your experience is significantly better than the pool that went into determining the premium rates that you paid, there's no adjustment. So you're going to pay that premium whether people use the services or not. The flip side of that, of course, is that if you've got a bunch of people that, have a lot of claims, have a lot of high claims, then there's similarly not an adjustment. You're not going to get charged more for that after the fact. Fully insured premiums have a little bit more stability. Like I said, you know what the premium is. That's what you're going to pay for the year. Self-funded arrangement, the carrier, in this case, Anthem, is going to do their best to project what they expect your claims to be, but your claims are probably never going to be that amount. They're going to be better, they're going to be worse. So those are just some, high-level considerations that often make people, what people think about when they're determining if they want to be in a self-funded or a fully insured arrangement. So that brings us to the actual straight up benefit plan comparison. One of the things that we did, again, as actuaries, we have all kinds of crazy tools and things that we look at. But there's a actuarial value calculator that we use an awful lot to sort of identify the richness of a plan of benefits. In the ACA world, which I work a lot in, there's requirements about platinum, gold, silver, and bronze plans. And each of those metal levels means something. Obviously, a platinum plan is the most rich. A bronze plan is the least rich. And there are, according to CMS, there's ranges of actuarial value that a plan must fall in to be classified as one of those. For the purposes of this, it kind of doesn't matter if the plan, falls in or out of the range, but I wanted to put the plan benefits in the actuarial value calculator and just kind of see what does it look like. So the partnership plan, not surprisingly, is a very rich plan. It's a generous plan of benefits. It has no deductible if you comply with the HEP requirements. If you don't comply, it's only a $350 deductible. There's minimal or no copays for most services. So if you put that plan in the actuarial value calculator, it comes out above the range of what CMS says a platinum plan is. And the reason CMS has those ranges is for ACA. In the ACA world, it matters. If you have a platinum plan, it has to fall in that range. This partnership plan is slightly above the upper end of what the ACA platinum plans would look like. Similarly, the Century Preferred PPO, which I understand there's not a whole lot of people left in, but it exists. People are still in it. It's also a pretty generous plan. It comes in solidly in the range of actuarial values where a platinum plan would be. Mostly driven by the fact that there's no deductible and the copays are minimal or non-existent for all services. The Century Preferred PPO HSA, which is now the plan that most people are enrolled in, has a $2,000 deductible, which, it is different. It's not zero. I took that plan of benefits, put it in the actuarial value calculator, ignoring the HSA contribution. So if we just looked at the plan benefits of a $2,000 deductible with a $3,000 out of pocket and zero, coinsurance, that plan comes in above the range of what is considered a gold plan. It's also a very rich, generous plan. I then reran it with accounting for the HSA contribution. Now, the thing that I have to emphasize is that when Hartford Public Schools contributes 50% of the deductible to members and puts it in their HSA accounts, what folks do with that contribution is a very personal decision that we can't project, you can't predict. There are folks who are going to use that money to pay for their cost sharing every single year because a $2,000 deductible is is certainly more onerous than a $0 deductible. So if you're being given money to pay for services up to that deductible, you're going to use it. There are folks who, don't touch that money. They use their HSA account as an investment account and, kind of save it up for if something catastrophic happens, or, some folks look at it as a vehicle for post-retirement medical cost savings. So in the actuarial value calculator, if you put an HSA contribution, it assumes that everyone's using that money for cost sharing in that plan year. So with that caveat, when we account for a 50% deductible contribution, the HSA plan goes to an actuarial value of slightly above the ACA platinum range. So again, the idea is that it is overall a very generous plan as well. This table, is that I think it fits on one page in the actual report. It doesn't fit all on my screen here, but it's just a summary of the high level cost sharing provisions of those plans. And that concludes our report.
Kathy, thank you very much for your really hard work and digging into the detail for us. I really think that you've given us something really informative here for us to take a look at, as we were hearing a lot of different thoughts about the comparison. And now I'm going to leave it for our members if they have any questions for you. Anybody? Mark?
Yeah, I think the initial reason or rationale was to do a deep dive into the comparison of benefits, which you've done very, very well for us. And I think it's obvious that out-of-pocket expenses for the state plan are significantly less than out-of-pocket expenses for an HSA. I mean, that's the whole point of the two plans. One is self-controlled, the other one is you've got a card, you go in and use it. A lot of it is a philosophical argument based on, depending upon the group that is using an HSA. In other words, will they go to the doctor when they're sick, or will they say, I don't want money to come out of my HSA account, so I'll stay home and take Tylenol? And then, you go to, and all of a sudden you got pneumonia. So it's a health care issue above and beyond a fiscal issue, which is something you can't measure other than anecdotal. My initial concern was plan design comparison, which you've done a very, very good job at. And it does not appear that there's any significant diminution from plan A to plan B, meaning HSA to the PPO. The difference obviously is who pays, what pays, and where do they pay. But on the other hand, the savings associated, at least what you're showing, the savings associated between the two plans is significant for Hartford. You're in the millions of dollars. So though I may have personal philosophical differences between the two, especially when you're in a low-wage worker mentality, low-wage workers have a tendency, for whatever reason, to not want to use insurance if they have to pay for it because it's coming out of their pocket and they're making $15 an hour, versus the high-wage individuals who have a lot in their HSA accounts and therefore will use it whenever they need to. Excluding that, I can't advocate for a restoration of the PPO versus the HSA for those reasons, based on the difference in money. I mean, I don't want to impose MARB's. I personally would not want to impose MARB's philosophical disagreements when you have Hartford, who's chosen for fiscal reasons to offer insurance plans that are comparable from a benefit structure and beyond that. So I want to say I'm satisfied with your overall view, deeply appreciative, and now we have something that we could rely on for the rationale to maintain. I mean, self-insurance plans, you know, are ways in order. I don't know the last time Hartford has not had a surplus in their insurance account, self-insurance account. So it's a good thing. And I think the most telling thing in your comparison is you don't have control over whether your group is a high risk group or a low risk group. It blends, especially with 2,000 employees or roughly thereabouts. So personally, I'm satisfied that it's done extremely thorough, well, and I personally have no need to try to move in any different direction or suggest that Hartford move in any different direction than the one that they're moving in now regarding health insurance for its employees. So that's my own personal opinion, and I want to thank you for a very deep dive and in-depth analysis. Not to say that the state partnership plan, which has come under some scrutiny, is questionable as to its future outlook anyway. So for the stability of the Hartford public school system, I think this is a good plan as it moves forward to build upon.
Yes, Lisa. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Mark. And also, we do appreciate your feedback. Go ahead, Lisa.
Thank you, Kim. Kathy, I just wanted to say as well that your analysis was very well done. I found your report extremely well written and easy to understand. So thank you for your work. I would like to state, though, that the years that you looked at had to have been impacted by the COVID pandemic, right? So people were not going to the doctors as often as they otherwise would. So I personally would be interested to see this analysis done, you know, next year when there's an additional year of data, because it may show that the actual cost for the self-insured plan is more or could be more than the partnership plan when people are getting back to their regular routine of seeing the doctors more frequently. So I just wanted to state that, you know, while it looks like the actual cost is less, and it certainly was much less in peak pandemic times, the actual cost might be more comparable now with an additional year of claims data. So thank you.
That's an excellent point, and I just want to say that you're absolutely correct. We did not attempt to make any adjustments for COVID. We, decided we were going to look at the actual costs because they're not debatable. These are the costs. However, and I'll agree with you that in height of the pandemic, what we've seen across the board is decreased utilization, which then leads to decreased costs. But what we've also seen is in the following year, in the 2021, we have seen clients' costs go so much higher than a normal year. And so the thought is that a lot of the care that was deferred at the height of the pandemic came back, in the year following. So again, I have no idea what's in the actual claim dollars for COVID or not there because of COVID. But, for some clients, we actually looked at, 2020 and 2021 and into 22 and sort of averaged them and said, well, maybe like that would be a normal year. The fact that the claims were still lower in 21 through 22 than the partnership plan premiums, again, it's hard to say. And you're absolutely right. Looking at more recent time periods would give you maybe a different view. But we just didn't have, ending it at June 2022 means that we're looking at claims, sort of the wrapping up of that plan year doesn't happen until much later in the year. So the next plan year that would have started July of 2022 and gone through just this past June, we still wouldn't have had complete enough information to include that in our review. So I just wanted to make that note as to why it was not included.
Yeah, I completely understand. And I guess another follow-up thought that I have, though, is, and I don't know if you know, or if this subcommittee has looked at it in the past, how many public school systems in the state of Connecticut offer the partnership plan?
Yeah, we do know that data, but we haven't brought that forward. But for our distressed municipalities that have come under, we really have really been focusing on any kind of cost savings measures. The reason for this report is that there definitely was some feedback that there was a thought that it definitely would save the city money, the Board of Ed, if they did make the shift. So in fact, an analysis had come to us to make sure that we take that into consideration. Hence the reason for the statement of work and bringing Milliman on to do this work for us independently. Yes.
Yeah, and getting to like Mark's point with regards to like not just fiscal savings, but the overall benefit of plan.
Exactly.
And that is available to employees. I know that Hartford Public Schools and other similarly distressed municipalities in our alliance districts are having a really hard time with staffing. So I just didn't know if the partnership plan is widely utilized in other public school systems, if employees are choosing to work elsewhere. I know that there's higher salaries elsewhere than they are choosing to work in a Hartford Public Schools or other alliance districts, but that is obviously outside the scope of MARB, which is just looking at the fiscal impact to the public schools. So thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Any other questions? I don't hear any. Kathy, thank you very much. We really appreciate all of your work with this, and you did a fantastic job, and it's very informative for this group. We will definitely be sharing with this with the full board and see if they would entertain whether we should bring this up for you to discuss it in October.
Okay.
Mark, what are your thoughts about that? Do you feel that we should bring that forward?
I think a brief presentation to the full board would be appropriate, as Lisa said, bringing in the difficulty of getting, I shouldn't say difficulty, but during the pandemic, and saying that this isn't the end of the story, but it is a picture of it as it stands today.
Right.
And maybe Hartford would look at, or we would look at down the road, another comparison to see if there is such an impact. But yeah, I think it would help.
Mm-hmm. But as also Kathy alluded, it might be helpful to wait 2 more years. So then you do the look back and get the next 2 years after that's done. That, I don't know, but it's something to think about.
No, I agree. I think that we're going back, we'll be discussing collective bargaining agreements. So we now have, thank God, collective bargaining agreements all the way through 2026 for most of it. So there's enough lead time, and this major shift that occurred with the present collective bargaining groups. Now everybody's on the same page, so to speak. The 2-year time limit or a re-evaluation, if Hartford's still with us in 2 years, would be a good idea, even though I would think they would do it on their own for the reasons of if they can save money. But I think that we can put it on our agenda for 2 years from now, if we're all here.
Right.
But
thank you. All right. Thank you, Kathy.
Thank you for having me. Have a good day, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. All right, let's move on to the next agenda item, which is review, discussion, and possible action on labor contracts. The first labor contract that we have before us today is a tentative agreement between the Board of Ed and the Hartford School Support Supervisors Association. This particular agreement is the last, to my knowledge, of the expired labor contracts. And so I really want to give kudos to the Board of Ed as they have negotiated at least all of the labor contracts to get current from all of their expired. So this is great work. And I know that Chief Penn will probably be happy to hear this as he had departed. And I know that he was working on all of these things. I did pull together a few highlights before kicking it over to you, Melinda. So this contract, as I stated, it had expired on June 30th. The effective date of this current contract is July 1 through 2023 through June 30th of 27. It's a 4-year contract. And the general wage increases is about 2% per year with a retroactive in the first year back to July 1st of 23. The members contribution for their high deductible plan will have no change in the first year, but you will see a change from years 2 through 4 of about 0.5% each year. Melinda is the chief negotiator from Melinda Kaufman, and I'm going to turn it over to you to fill us in on the rest of the highlights. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kennison. Good morning, everyone. Let me just go briefly over this contract. As Ms. Kennison said, this one was our last out-of-date contract. It was really only a couple months out of date. We had gotten all the hugely out-of-date ones up to date by the end of last year. And that means that all of our groups are on that high deductible health plan HSA. There are none left on the PPO plan. This is just a brief overview. This is kind of the group of supervisors who are non-certified and don't fit in any other unit. So it's really an eclectic group. Some of these are from the food service department, and that's important because they are self-funded, so their salaries are covered under the fees that are collected through the food service programs. Others are in the payroll department. They're kind of all over the place. There are 38 of them. This has been a group that has worked very well with us in the past for savings. You will note if you look at the contract, this is the only group that their current members or new employees as they get hired are not in a pension plan. They have I believe it's a 403B plan instead of being in the pension, and that's historic going back long before I was involved with these contracts. The tentative agreement was reached on August 10th. Then it was ratified by the union on August 24th, which meant our next board meeting was last Tuesday. The board did approve this on September 19th, which means it now goes before you guys. Kimberly, I'm sorry, did a pretty good job of summarizing, but let me go briefly over what these changes are. This was really just a discussion with this group on salary and insurance, and there were a couple changes that the board requested that the union did acquiesce to. So as far as salaries, this is a group we brought before one other group that was the building and ground supervisors. Instead of having steps, this contract has ranges. And what we noted and what the union brought forth is that there had not been movement within the ranges in more than 10 years. So when they might get a 2% increase, for example, the max and men would increase 2%, they would increase 2%. So they were always stuck exactly at the same point in the ranges. So this contract goes towards fixing that a little bit. So retroactive to July 1, 2023, we have 2% gross wage increases, and then a 5% what we're calling range adjustment for those not on top step. We defined range adjustment as basically 1/10 of the difference between the max and the min. Comes out to be, don't quote me on this, but it's somewhere about 2%, 2.5%, depending on the schedule in there. July 1, 2024, it's a 2% GWI, no range adjustment. For 2025, again, we see 2% GWI with the 5% range adjustment. And then July 1, 2026, a 2% GWI. As far as premium cost shares, they are in the high deductible HSA plan. That's the only thing available to them. They've done that in the last cycle. And this year, the cost share is staying at 20%. They are one of our highest groups, and then moving up 0.5 every year after that. And then just a few language changes. One is something that we've done for every group, increasing the tuition reimbursement rate to $3.75 per credit for up to 6 credits per year to better match what colleges are actually charging. Something requested by HR was to add progressive discipline language into the contract to make that clearer. And then some updates to language about how to request leave, which was outdated, and some other things such as that. So with that, if there are questions, otherwise, Mr. Foster, I don't know if you want to discuss the finances or do you want me to do that?
I can certainly give a quick overview of the finances. So I believe we included in your packet a summary, and just to recap it quickly, as Melinda said, it's a small, about 38-member unit. The net cost to the district over the 4 years of the proposed contract is $166,086. That is backing out the cost of the increases, the GWI and range adjustments for the food service employees for that self-funded program. It also backs out the sort of modest savings to the district associated with the increase in the premium cost share. But that's really that's the short version of the changes in the costs, and certainly we have the year by year in your packet as well.
I have one question on the financial side, if you don't mind.
Sure.
I noticed that you had built into the budget a 2% for 24, but I don't see that you've built in anything for 25, 26, and 27. Were you planning to have, or was that information, I think that they would throw it into contingency and a contingency line during years so that folks wouldn't know that we've budgeted a 2% increase and then just put that out there. So there is no planned budget in a 5-year plan for increases that put away in a budget.
Yeah, that's a good question. I believe the reason we have that in the note in the summary for the 23-24 is because, to answer your question, no, we didn't build in a planned 2% increase when we finalized our 23-24 budget, which is why that's reflective, obviously, starting in 24-25, the actuals associated with the new contract will be built into the budget.
Okay.
And let me know if I'm not answering you correctly.
I think that you probably do not have a full 5-year plan is what I'm thinking.
Yes. No. Yeah. Sorry. In answer to your question, yeah, I think, and that's something we could certainly look at in terms of our budget process. But I think once the contracts are adopted, we certainly are building the wage increases into the budget. But to your point about anticipating changes, I believe you're correct about that.
I'm going to give it to the members, but I will have another question afterwards. Any questions from the other board members? No, Mark? Okay.
No.
I do have one question. It's the last sheet that was included in the packet for me, which is the job classifications and long distance. And it lists the positions and the people, I'm assuming their start date. So while it just has the titles, I'm assuming that there are people behind each one of these. And if I look at that, there are 3 folks that fall under the 5% difference line. And those 3 folks actually are your oldest, I'm going to say your oldest employees that have been employed with the Board of Ed for the longest period of time. And so if you look all the way down to the first time that you see it under grade and rank under C710, it's not the first position, it's the second position called supervisor. And that particular position under the 5% difference, I'm assuming they would get, do they get no increase? It says 0 under 5%. I'm trying to understand that.
So I believe the answer to that is those are the language negotiated in the contract was that the 5% range adjustment would be for those not at the maximum. And so the 3 people, I believe, where the 5% difference shows as 0, I believe is because they are at the maximum of the range for their classification. Right.
That's what I thought too.
Yeah.
So when we look at that data, though, I'm just wondering if I'm thinking that the second one that has a 0 is coordinator all the way down to a grade rank of C730, and that one also has a 0. So that's the second one that came to my attention. The third one that came to my attention is all the way down at the bottom, which is the director. And that's a 2007, and it doesn't say that that person was capped based on the dollar range. So I'm looking at their salary, but
Mhm.
3 people above that, which is the director who started working in 2012, they have the 0. I would have thought that the bottom one of 16 years would have had the 0 versus the individual above that started in 2012. So I just want you to take a look at that table.
I can probably answer that. I will tell you, I did not look at the specifics, but that is exactly what we're trying to correct.
Yeah,
Is that people came in on a certain part on the range
yeah,
and then haven't moved.
right.
So it's possible someone could have been there 6 years, gotten, and I'm just making up numbers now, a 2% increase for the last 16 years, which I understand they didn't, but
Right.
but the max and mins went up also, so they still haven't moved in the range, and that's exactly what we're trying to correct with that
Understand.
range differential.
I would just suggest if that is the situation on these, and if you just would look at them to clarify and make sure that the table is accurate. It looks to me like there might have to be an adjustment with the analysis of the director that was hired in 2012 and the director that was hired in 2007 under the grade classification of C780.
Yeah, I appreciate that. We will take a look at that for sure. Because I 100% see what you're talking about. 2 people who
Okay.
have the same classification and relatively, it looks like almost the same annual
Salary.
pay. So why is one a 0 and why is one not a 0? So yeah, we will
Correct.
absolutely take a look at that.
Very good. That's it for my questions. No other questions? All right, can we entertain a motion for this committee to recommend to the full board for approval of the Board of Ed and the Hartford School Support Supervisors Association?
So moved.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Lisa. Any other discussion? I hear none. All in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Stephen. All right. The motion carries and this contract has been approved for the full MARB's consideration. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Melinda. All right, let's move on to the next agenda item, which is a tentative agreement between the city and the Hartford Municipal Employees Association. And this contract, sorry, I've got to get to my notes. Here we go. This contract expired on June 30th. We have a new contract that is effective as of July 1st of 2023 through June 30th of 2027. It has 4 years. Included in this contract is clerical custodian, data processing, a very large group of folks, engineering. They span across a lot of areas, nursing, medical professionals, and trades. The rate increases are effective in year 1 with a retroactive to July 1 of 2023 for 4%. And in years 2 through 4 is a 2% increase. And I'm wondering if legal counsel and or Julian, are you going to give us any
Yes.
additional information on this? Thank you.
Yes. This contract is actually our second to last of the expired contracts with the so the approval of this contract, once it is approved, would leave just our school crossing guards contract to get up to date. And discussions have resumed with that group as well. So
Fantastic.
we're a little bit behind the Board of Ed, but getting much closer.
And that was the question I was going to ask you before the meeting.
So this agreement was signed on September 8th. And so working off of the 44-day window, that would give us until October 22nd to take action if the board desires. The union has ratified this, and it is on the agenda for the council's September 25th meeting And then at that point, it would likely be referred to their labor committee and then come back to the council for approval on October. You mentioned that this covers a period of July 23 to June of 27. And you described the employees that it covers. It covers 187 funded positions in the general fund and another 50 positions that are grant funded or outside the general fund. It's a wide range of positions, as you noted, in every department. There's administrative, project managers. It covers many different disciplines and folks that bring in a wide range of diverse expertise. You noted the general wage increases are 4% in the first year, followed by 2% in each of the following 3 years. And just for history, some background on this group. This group took their 2 previous contracts. The older one went from fiscal year 18 through fiscal year 21. Those were all zeros in each of those 4 years. The contract that just expired covered 2 fiscal years. In FY22, the contract provided a 3% general wage increase, and in FY23, 0%. So over that 6-year span, there was 1 general wage increase that occurred in FY22. Other than the GWI, there are a few other changes. There's a replacement of, there's an in lieu payment for certain positions. It's called the in lieu payment. It's in lieu of overtime for certain positions. There's a 5% tack onto their pay. This replaces the in lieu payment for 2 nursing related positions. So they would get paid actual overtime. There's some obsolete language regarding vacation carryover that is eliminated. And then there's also an agreement to cooperatively revisit job descriptions that need updating without those discussions being subject to negotiations. And other than that, there are no other changes. There's no change to health plan design or cost share. The current cost share is 21%. We did provide the financial analysis as well as the comparison of salaries and other municipalities for a fairly extensive sample of the positions in this bargaining unit. And then also, as is the case with all of the contracts that we negotiate, we build the projected cost into the FY24 budget and into our 5-year projections. So with that, I will try to answer your questions. And I believe, yes, our Assistant Director for Labor Relations is also available.
So these have all been, they're all included in your budget.
Yes.
Thank you, Julian. How many vacancies do you have in this group, if you don't mind?
So I mentioned there are 187 general fund positions. Of those, 150 are filled and 37 are vacant. I may be off by 1 or 2, it changes. And then for the 50 non-general funds, so those are primarily grant funded positions, 29 are filled and 21 vacant. And those positions sometimes, the grant funded ones are, as we near the end of a grant, they may be, left vacant as we sort of transition out.
Understand. I have no questions. Any questions from the members?
Quickly, the 4% in the first year, I assume, is because the previous year there was, when the contract ended, there was no increase. So what you're doing is going 2% retroactive annually, for lack of a better term. It looks to me like it's a 4-year contract, 2, 2, 2, 2, and you just both the 4% because there was a year missing, for lack of a better term.
You're on mute, Deb, but was that the thought process with the 4?
Yes.
You're muted.
Oh, we can't hear you, Deb.
Can you hear me now?
No, it
Sorry
was
about
Deb.
that. Yeah,
Oh,
sorry
She
about
was
that.
responding.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You're good, Mark. Thank you.
I don't really think that that was our thought process per se, but it was because when we looked at salaries and with all the zeros, they were becoming behind their peers. And so we kind of uploaded the increase so that we would become more competitive, and also hopefully to attract and retain more employees with the, bigger bump up initially.
Okay, that makes sense. Based on the vacancies you have, I agree with you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I just did the same thing. Any other questions? All right. Could we entertain a motion to recommend to the full board for approval the tentative agreement between the city and the Hartford Municipal Employees Association?
So moved.
Thank you, Mark. How about a second?
Second.
Thank you, Lisa. Any other discussion? I hear none. All in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Stephen. All right, the motion carries, and your agreement will go forth to the full MARB on the October 5th. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is the budget mitigation measures. Julian, I'm going to turn that over to you to give us an update on that.
Yes, I included a one page or a very brief sort of outline format of our current status on the mitigation measures. And if you recall back to it was the budget adoption timeframe when we presented this, our measures were broken out into two groups. There were short-term measures and long-term measures, with the short-term measures consisting of items that could be implemented, in year one with relatively little lead time. And both of the short-term measures here are on the revenue side. They include some tasks that are really a continuation of existing efforts that boost revenues above our budgeted revenues. And, at some point, we just sort of consider these ongoing activities. So with the property taxes, we do, on a recurring basis, do personal property audits or tax deed sales. Neither of those are currently scheduled. Those would tend to be, springtime items or springtime activities. And then we also engaged with a collections agency. If you remember from a year or so ago, there was a contract with one collection agency where the city was splitting the proceeds of their collections on a 50-50 basis. That contract expired, and then a new contract has been entered into with the same agency that does collections for our other delinquent revenues, like the private duty and so forth. So that agency is now doing both services. And then on the delinquent revenues side, I did mention it here, but the next thing for me with this item is to update our policies and procedures. We have been working to get up to staff and on the administrative side in this office. Now that we have that, we're turning our attention. Well, will give us a little bit more capacity to turn our attention to that. We did update the rates that we charge for police and fire private duty. Police had gone for roughly 6 years without having the rates updated. There was a partial increase on last year, and then we finished the job this summer by increasing it again. The thinking was last year not to do it all in one big jump. So we're up to date with police, and then similarly with fire, we had gone, I think, 5 years without updating those rates. So those have been updated as of July of this year. And then I'm just noting here that we had some old debt from when Cirque du Soleil was in town. This is, you know, a fairly sizable amount, was roughly $65,000 that was determined to be uncollectible once they went bankrupt. The bankruptcy proceedings finally concluded, and we've submitted that for write-off with the council, but it does require council approval.
What is your level for council approval, if you don't mind me asking?
50,000.
Okay, thank you.
And then, and so in the long-term measures in the plan, the idea here was that these would consist of items that could potentially be much more impactful on our revenues or expenditures, but that they required more lead time in evaluation and planning, you know, starting off with just determining the feasibility of whether or not we should be pursuing them. And that the implementation, you know, might be a multi-year effort. And so some of these items may drop off of the list if at some point it's determined that they're determined not to be fruitful going forward, and then other items may be added to the list. I expect other items to be added to the list as we proceed. And then as you'll see that these are all still in sort of their launch phase or initial sort of concept development phase. And as we progress through them, I will build these out into more, you know, kind of a project management status for you rather than just a very sort of skeletal bulletized list. So for example, you know, starting with the energy efficiency, the one item that I'm looking at now with our the folks that run the energy related programs, the sustainability officer and our capital land director is taking a look at performance-based energy projects where, if you're familiar with these, the cost of the improvements are financed through the savings on the energy bill. And then once the capital cost is paid off, then all of the benefits of the savings of the efficiency measures, you know, accrue to the customer. And then just an update on one item that has been in play for a while. There's some low landfill solar panels that are in the process of being installed, are planned to be operational sometime in 2024. So that will generate some energy savings. In the grants area, you're familiar with and have seen you know, frequent updates on grants that the city has been successful in being awarded. For the most part, you know, the grants tend to support activities that are above and beyond our sort of core operating budget, which is great because it enables the city to, you know, sort of provide enhanced services and address, you know, priority needs. From the 5-year financial plan perspective, grants, we would also be looking for grants that can help offset our core operating budget. So that's going to take some creativity and some planning there. We've been building up capacity in our grant division. We filled a senior project manager with a really strong employee who will help us there. She initially is helping us in the prospecting area. She's also helping us start to update our policies and procedures there. We have a draft RFP developed for a grants management software system, which will also, you know, relieve us of a lot of manual activity that's being conducted now. If we can automate some of these systems, that will also free us up for you know, sort of more value from the time we spend in this area. And then, you know, our prospecting for new grants is ongoing. It's right before this meeting, we had a meeting with the mayor on, you know, the status of applications that are under consideration, applications that have been submitted, applications that have been awarded, and so forth. So that never stops. Advanced life support billing, that's billing insurance agencies for advanced advanced medical care that the patients get from emergency medical services. A number of municipalities do ALS billing. That was the initial thought. Our risk manager actually has an idea of perhaps maybe we should be starting with fire service billing. So she is exploring that. But again, that particular item is still just in the exploratory phase. But continue with our risk manager, who's very creative, has many good ideas. She is always working on new measures to manage the cost of workers' compensation. And I think we've reported out on the reduction in claims expense over the last several years on a number of occasions. Her current initiatives are to develop a return to work program with a priority on maintainers, fire and police personnel. That would probably be, a multi-year effort to roll it out organization-wide. And then, as I think we mentioned before, developing a managed care plan for workers' comp, sort of create a network of providers that can be used when seeking workers' treatment under workers' comp. I've not taken any steps on updating the local fees and charges yet. And then in the pension liability reduction efforts, one of the ideas that our benefits manager had was to look at the possibility of a buyout or a partial buyout for the folks in the city's retirement plan. We had a meeting with a consulting firm who was going to give us a quote for, doing some initial analysis of, whether there are potentially savings to be had there and how we would proceed with that. So that's underway. And again, we'll be building these out. So, next step would be for that one. And for example, would be, based on the results of their preliminary analysis, determining if it's a go or a no-go, and then, engaging with the treasurer. We probably need to engage with, counsel for a letter of determination from IRS, and all of those kinds of steps. We'll build out a plan like that and report out in that manner.
Very exciting.
Yes. And it's fun to be able to turn, to get through the budget process and be able to turn to these kinds of things. It is exciting.
It is. Very good. Glad to hear that. And I'm glad that you're able to start to fill some of those positions that have been vacant that you've needed for some time, Julian.
Too.
Any questions for the city on the mitigation plan and measures? All right, I hear none. Thank you, Julian. Any of the other related items that I have for today is just to bring folks up to date on, we have a full MARB meeting on October the 5th, in which these contracts would all go forward for full approval or consideration for approval at that time. And then I meant to look at when the next subcommittee was scheduled for, and I did not do that. So I'm not sure if anybody on my team can help me with that right now.
My calendar is right in front of me, and it says November 16th.
Thank you. All right, November 16th for the next subcommittee. And any other business from the members? All right, how about a motion to adjourn then?
So moved.
Thank you, Mark.
Second.
Thank you, Lisa. All right, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, have a good day. You got some time back, and I know we can all use it. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Stay healthy, everybody.
Yes, you too.